Hello. It's great to see everybody here at the conference. I'm really sorry I couldn't make this in person. And I want to thank everyone who's attending. I want to thank for the contributions you make to the Route 66 community. And I want to thank Cheryl and Terry and Debbie, Joe, and Jeff, and everyone who's involved with making this conference happen every year. Cyrus Avery and his associates would be sure proud of what you're doing to keep his legacy alive and ensuring that Route 66 remains relevant into the centennial and beyond. When I was asked to speak about my 66-year association with Route 66, it led to a lot of contemplation and thought. Route 66 has been such a big part of my life. And Jeff, you can cue the Twilight Zone music at any point in this story. But it just really got me to thinking, about the highway, my association, and if I could try to distill this in short as time as possible. And there's two parts to this that I feel are really key. One, it's the people. It's always been about the people. The fact that you're here, the fact that I'm talking to you, the fact that you're listening to me beat my gums. It's the people. That's what makes Route 66 special. That's what makes it, as Michael Wallace called it, a linear community. But it's America's longest small town. Today it's a living museum with an overlay of Disneyland. So it's the people, and it's a shared adventure. That's a big part of it, especially for me, the people and the shared adventure. And I got to thinking and meditating on this a little bit about the centennial, my 66 years of the road, what the future holds for Route 66. And one thing that came to mind is I've become one of the old farts, one of the people that gather around at the general store and listen to the old guy sitting around the Cracker Barrel beating his gums and telling the stories. And I've always been pretty handy at that. In fact, that's what gave rise to Jim Hinckley's America. People telling me that I had a gift for telling people where to go, and people telling me that I could tell stories for hours, even if I was the only one in the room, and still enjoy myself. But the adventure that is Route 66 for me is seeing, it's again, the people. And the relevance of Route 66 into the centennial, the reason I feel it's going to be relevant well into the bicentennial is you've got to be about my age, 70 or so, to have a real direct connection to Route 66 when it was the highway. And yet, it's still vibrant, it's still popular, it's still evolving, still growing. We still blur the line between past, present, and future on Route 66. And that's going to continue. We have a new generation coming up. Reese, who's here today, and Sam, his charming wife, Elizabeth Olwig, Brady Wilson. Got a whole new generation of passionate, enthusiastic people. So that is kind of my thoughts on Route 66. Let me share on a little bit of my story and how this ties into the shared adventure that is Route 66. And my passion for the people of Route 66. I think one thing that sums it up, encapsulates it a little bit, is my new book, Route 66, 100 Years. This was kind of a dream project of mine for a long time because we have a tendency to focus on neon and tail fins when we tell the Route 66 story. And I've always wanted to go deeper. And with this book, I had a little bit of editorial leeway. So we start the book with the American plan, the 1830s, Senator Henry Clay, and showing the evolution of transportation that gave rise to the highways, U.S. highway system, and eventually Route 66. And the book chronicles the evolution of Route 66 from highway to icon and gives a sneak peek at its future and the role of the internationals, the role of the immigrants, past, present, and future, in Route 66 story. And again, it's the people. Not only do we talk about the people that made this happen in this book, but for me, it was an opportunity to work with some very, very talented friends that are passionate about the Route 66 community. People like Cheryl Eicher Jett, Joe Sonderman, Reese Martin, Greg Hassman, Dries Bessels. They all contributed to this Route 66 Centennial Anthology. Cheryl can tell you more about the book, but I want to thank you. How did I go from, how did I get here, so to speak? Well, that's a good question. I ask myself that a lot because my origins are pretty inauspicious, to say the least. There's a family legend that I was potty trained along the road, Route 66. I don't know if that's true, and fortunately, even though my folks love to tell that story at the most inopportune and embarrassing moments, fortunately, any evidence of that's pretty much gone. We had a house fire in '63, lost a lot of that. But there may be evidence of these early road trips soon. I have an announcement to make on this that might be of interest. My nephew, who lives in my pa's house in Michigan, recently found a box of his films. My pa, like a lot of people in the 50s and 60s, was obsessed with 8mm home movies. I wanted to get these digitized and see what's on them, but apparently it chronicles a lot of our road trips in the 50s and 60s. My first road trip west, I was a little too young to remember it. It took place when Edsels were being produced and Studebakers were still rolling from the factory, and tail fins were the height of automotive design. In 1959, my pa was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and he had a lifelong passion for the romanticism of the West, like a lot of people in his generation, and Western movies, all of this. And I think that was the catalyst for this family vacation. I should clarify that by vacation I mean epic odyssey worthy of Steinbeck and the Grapes of Wrath. Always an adventure. But that summer we went west to Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and my pa said that we picked up Route 66 in St. Louis on that trip. My pa, even in later years when he had money, he always tried to bring things in under budget or see how cheaply he could do things. In this instance, we made the trip in a 1949, 1950 Chevy convertible that he had gotten cheap because it had been underwater in a hurricane. We made this trip in a car with no top and what I understand was very minimal floorboards. It was kind of my first real epic cross-country adventure. And like I say, my folks like to say that I was potty trained along the highway. But fast forward a couple years, and this kind of gives you an idea why I said Jeff could cue the Twilight Zone music. In the summer of '66, we were living in Port Huron, Michigan. My pa was in the Coast Guard then at the time on the lakes. And he had decided he was going to muster out of the service that year. And he was a WW2 Navy vet, Pacific, and then Coast Guard. And he decided he had enough of water, oceans, Great Lakes, all that stuff. And he wanted to have a small little ranch or western property. So I'm not imaginative enough to make this up. My pa folded a map, western United States, southwest, threw a dart. Yucca, Arizona was the closest. And the closest to Yucca with people was Kingman. So, in the Odyssey began. My two sisters and myself were sandwiched in the back of Pa's 64 Ford Fairlane. We put a trailer on the back, small trailer, and followed most of Route 66 to Kingman, Arizona. And my pa got everything set up here, and then he went back to Michigan to pick up everything else that we'd left behind. And moving out here was culture shock, to say the very least. I was born in North Carolina. I'd spent a lot of summers on family farms. My mom's family was all out of Chattanooga, Sand Mountain, Alabama, North Georgia around Ringgold, and Monteagle, Tennessee, all in that countries. And at the time, like I say, we moved out here. We were living in Port Huron, Michigan. So this was a dramatic change. And Kingman was really a different town. It it was still deeply immersed in territorial Arizona. This was a Western community, and it was really amazing. It was really different and a culture shock. My pa had, when he had made a decision to move out here, he got caught up in what was really common in this part of the 60s, land boondoggles in the Southwest, selling property you don't own, housing developments that never materialized, that kind of thing. My pa had bought some property sight unseen on the corner of Sacramento Road and Zuni Trail out in the Sacramento Valley. As it turned out, the property was literally in the middle of just nowhere. It still is in the middle of nowhere. But it was almost dead center between post Route 66 through Yucca and pre-52 Oatman Road, going up through Oatman. When it became apparent when he found the property and found that the housing development was going to happen and we were not going to be building out there, he bought what was supposed to have been the model home for that subdivision, that planned community. As it turned out, it was a model home only in name. It was just a shell. And it was literally on Route 66, the pre-52 alignment going up to Oatman. That was my front yard. I could spit out my bedroom window and hit the road. Over the course of the next 18 months or so, my pa and I tore down the Episcopal Church, a couple other buildings. We used the lumber to build a garage and finish the house and then move out there. And that continued made the culture shock magnified. Not only were we in Kingman, Arizona, but we moved out into the brush, the sticks, and it was wild. It was crazy. We had to haul water, so all us kids started driving long before we had a driver's license. Where we got our water was a system of tanks about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the house. I later learned that through Jack Rittenhouse's book, A Guide to Highway 66, that where we got water was the site of Fig Springs Station. Jack Rittenhouse had mentioned that was closed. But there was almost no traffic on the old road at that time. So I learned to ride a bicycle on the road and learned, of course, to drive trucks. My first paying job was for Ed Edgerton up at Ed's camp. I'd ride my bicycle up there, or if I couldn't commandeer my pa's pickup. And I helped Edgerton work. He was famous for his tomatoes and cantaloupes and melons. And I'd work in the garden up there. And I was a bit young to really appreciate the opportunities because Ed was a geologist and had been out there. He first came to Arizona in 1910. Then World War I kind of interrupted things. After the war, he was back in Arizona. About 1920-ish, he started building Ed's camp at Little Meadows. This had been an oasis, on a Native American trade route. Father Garces in 1776 chronicled a Spanish expedition across northern Arizona along that trade route, and they camped there. Early American explorers camped there. Edsel Ford stopped there during his trip in 1915 on the National Trails Road. And Ed tried to share a lot of this history with me, these stories, and he took me up in the mountains, showed me things. I was too young to appreciate the opportunities I had. Now, my mom said I was always born 90, and I never seemed to age. And as long as I can remember in my mind's eye that when I got to be where I'm at now, this point in my life, I would probably be a cross between Walter Brennan and Slim Pickens. See, that's how old I am. I know who those people are. Ed was the proverbial desert rat, and he kind of fit that perspective of the old guy. He wore long underwear all year round, and when it got to be about 100 degrees, he'd roll up his sleeves. His underwear was probably white at some point in time, and I have no evidence of this, but I assume Ed had an allergy to soap because he sure didn't seem to use it too much. The Valley was a real learning experience for me, and like I say, I've always been. People fascinate me. I love quirky people. I love listening to their stories. There's so many stories. People have lived such amazing lives And if you just take time to listen and show interest. But sometimes that quirkiness can get just cross into bizarre. And out in the valley, the only people who lived out there were just strange. I don't know what that says about us. But my pa referred to them as dry roasted nuts. I'll give you an example. There was one elderly couple that moved out there in the valley about a mile or so up the road from us. And they were somewhere between 60 and 200 years old. And they, maybe 5'2", 5'3", if they were reclining. And they looked like an avocado with legs. And one reason they'd moved down the desert, they decided they didn't want to wear clothes anymore. And they'd come down and talk to my pa about something. And my ma would see them pull in the driveway. She'd run us into the house, us kids, and my pa would sit there and talk to them. They'd sit in their truck just naked as jaybirds talking to my dad. And what a damn strange place. We didn't have a school bus out in the valley, and there was about 10, 12 of us kids. So we had to go up to Whiting Brothers on Route 66 to catch the bus. And that's now Dan's Auto Salvage. And so we were captives with the parents. Whichever parents were driving that week, we'd all pile in their pickup. They'd drop us off at Whiting Brothers. We'd catch the bus, get dropped off after school, and picked up by another set of parents. And sometimes we'd have to be at the gas station at 15 to 6 in the morning and get picked up at 6 o'clock at night. So that gave me an opportunity to kind of hang out around the gas station and listen to stories, listen to travelers, listen to the interaction between the gas station attendant and the people traveling Route 66. And it fascinated me. Their stories, the places they'd seen, the things they were doing, the places they were going, intrigued me. Another part of the Route 66 connection to my life in these years, every year we would make these epic odysseys. My pa worked at Duval Copper Mine here north of Kingman, and he'd have 2 weeks paid vacation. And we'd start our vacation, his first day off, 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd be going through the house, banging trash can lids, informing everybody that 05:30 we leave. We would, in 2 weeks, we would go see my mom's family in Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, and then his ma up in Jackson, Michigan, and then back to Arizona. A lot of those trips were along portions of Route 66. And when I tell these stories about some of these things I've done in my early years, people look at me and like, how old are you? It sounds like I'm talking about the 1930s, not the 1960s. But by this time, my older sister had married shortly after we moved to Kingman, so it was just my little sister, me, my mom and pa. And we'd stay in a motel every second night. Otherwise, we'd camp along the road. And we'd usually eat in a diner once a day. The rest of the time, we'd get bread and lunch meat, make sandwiches on the road. My pa kept a little box of sugar and cornflakes in the car. And we'd stop at some store along the road and get some milk and some bananas or something for breakfast, some rolls. And so I really came to appreciate the roadside parks. Still do. My dearest friend and I, when we travel, we carry an old wicker picnic basket, and we still enjoy those roadside parks. It's a throwback. It's a tangible link to my childhood, I guess. Lived in Kingman for a while, and then we moved to New Mexico, and then back to Michigan. And I had decided, much to my surprise, when we went back to Michigan, I realized how much I missed the desert. I missed these open spaces. I missed the landscapes. I missed the history. And I missed the people, the fascinating, fascinating people. So I had decided that as soon as I finished school, I'd hightail it back out to Arizona. And my pa apparently had decided that he wanted to come back west too. So he made me a deal I couldn't refuse. And that deal, of course, was pretty good for him. Very seldom worked out for me. But in exchange for helping him move my mom and sister and move everything back out to Arizona, he would set me up with a place and give me a few bucks. So the first thing we did was tag team drive, just my pa and I, from Michigan to Kingman, a lot of it on Route 66. We did it in just a hair under 3 days, about 3 days. Came out here, got a place to rent, set up some stuff, drove back to Michigan, picked up my sister and my ma, and we again tag teamed. My ma never drove, so it was my pa and I. We drove back out to Arizona on Route 66 a lot, and then we went back to Michigan to finish selling the store and clean up stuff, turn things over, have my uncle manage the Hinckley house, which had been converted to apartments, and put together a truck. My pa was kind of a mechanic of sorts. He could cobble stuff together with almost out of magic, it seemed like. And for this instant, he had picked up an old Goodwill box truck. It was a 57, 58 Chevy Viking, big monster, with a 4-speed gearbox, 2-speed rear. Anyway, it was a Michigan truck, so it was rusty as hell, and he had to cut plywood for the floorboards. And then he welded up a tow bar, and we put the 53 Chevy pickup behind it, and loaded that to the hilt, and we set out. And even though the interstate was largely replacing Route 66 by this time, we took as much of 66 in the back roads as we could. That old oil-burning Chevy was not a speed demon, and it was overloaded, and we were pulling a truck that was overloaded, so we weren't setting any speed records. We got out by between Gallup and Lupton, and the tow bar came loose on the 53 Chevy, and the 53 Chevy rear-ended the Viking. I don't know how my pa kept that truck upright, but we were off the road, through the brush, and down through a barbed wire fence. And I bounced my head off the dash, broke one lens in my glasses. And that truck hadn't even stopped really rolling. My pa jumped out, and he said, got to get these trucks back up on the road, get out of here. The cops will probably stop. And I think he was worried because the trucks were too overloaded and whatnot. Didn't want any hassles. So, short version, he disconnected the Chevy. What was left of the tow bar, he tied up to the grill. It banged up a fender, smashed out the light, and something was boogered up in the front end because it had quite a wobble. But he fired up the pickup, and then he headed back for the Viking, and he told me, "Follow me, meet you in Gallup." Well, that was quite a drive back to Gallup. That old Chevy pickup was overloaded. Front end had a bad wobble, and I had basically one eye because I had broken my glasses, and I had a big goose egg in my head. And I don't remember the name of the motel or garage, but the first motel we came to in Gallup, Pa pulled in. We got a room. He paid for 3 nights. And next door was a garage. We took the Chevy over there. He talked to the mechanic and asked him if he could pound out the fender, put a light in it, and straighten up that front end wobble. And then he always had his priorities in order. Then he took me to the hospital. I ended up with about 8 stitches top of my head. The next morning, over breakfast, he handed me some cash and said, the Chevy will be ready in about 2-3 days. I'll see you in Kingman. And he got in that old Viking truck and just disappeared in a cloud of smoke. And that started another Route 66 adventure. When the Chevy was done, I just took off down Route 66, I-40 in this overloaded 53 Chevy. And it was winter, December. And I got caught up in a pretty good snow over towards, from Winona all the way over to Ash Fork. Got into a pretty heavy snow, and boy, that was a Mr. Toad's wild ride. And I had been driving, Route 66 for quite a while by then. Not only did I drive water trucks as a kid, but even before I had a driver's license, we would haul hay out of Fort Mojave down by Needles and come up through Oatman and over St. Grease Pass. My pa had a 50-something Studebaker steak bed. One particular instant, I had to drive the truck. It's a long story, but short version is I was a scrawny, kid, and I've gotten over that. You can tell. Years of chasing good pie and cobbler, it's kind of caught up with me. But On one particular instance, I ended up having to drive the Studebaker full of hay back by myself back through the hill before I had a driver's license, and I had to wire blocks of wood to the pedals. That was another adventure. So anyway, but driving the 53 Chevy back to Kingman really wasn't that big of a deal, even though I was only 18. It was a little nerve-wracking, and I really didn't have enough sense to know better, I suppose. And my pa was true to his word. He gave me a few bucks when we got to Kingman. I got here Christmas Eve day that year, and he got me a room at, as it turned out, for a month at the Hotel Beale. That place was a real flop house at the time. That was a learning experience, but that's a story for another day. My first job in Kingman also had a Route 66 connection. I went to work for George Hines at Mojave Volkswagen, down where Canada Mart is now, on the curve going out of Kingman on the post 38 alignment of Route 66. It turns out E.J. McCarthy had started that as a dealership in 50. He built the place in 58, 59. And this is kind of odd, but McCarthy had been a mayor in Kingman, and he was obviously pretty sharp, so I don't know what the hell he was thinking. Selling international trucks and Studebaker cars and trucks made sense in 1958-59, but he was also selling Mercedes in Kingman, Arizona in 1959. Anyway, so I worked there at Volkswagen in the garage for a bit, and started doing odd jobs on the side, and decided I needed a pickup. And I never knew his first name. Everybody just knew him as Old Man Schultz. He was the best guy to go to for cheap vehicles in the area. And he lived out in Logusville. There's nothing much left there at Logusville. Logusville is one of these hole-in-the-road pit stop communities that have blossomed along Route 66. This had kind of come up sometime before establishment of the Kingman Army Airfield during World War II. It was just, Logusville was a gas station, garage, little auto court, store, wrecking yard, that kind of thing. And Schultz, he'd piece together these old wrecks and sell them, line them up along the highway. I went out and saw him and parted with some hard-earned cash and ended up with a well-worn 1942 Chevy half-ton pickup. You've heard diamond in the rough? Well, this was a diamond cut by a blind apprentice. And it had all the sex appeal of a mud fence in a rainstorm. But it was a pretty dependable old pickup. It was about this time, I guess, my pa's interest in the West, the Romanticism, plus my association with so many of these colorful characters like Ed and the Tatums and some of the others, it rubbed off on me. And this was commencement of my John Wayne period, I guess you'd say. I got to knowing Mrs. Robinson. She brought her trucks in for service at the Volkswagen garage. She had the Crozier Canyon Ranch. She asked me to come to work out there. And that was my first ranch job. Crozier Canyon Ranch, as it turned out, was the 7V resort and ranch back in the era of National Old Trails Road and Route 66. In fact, the tack room, bunkhouse, all that stuff on the ranch were the old cabins from the auto court. Route 66 had originally run right through the ranch yard between the cabins and the main ranch house. And a big flood in 36, 37 resulted in realignment, Route 66 being put up on the hill where you drive today through the Hackberry General Store. I started doing a lot of ranch work in that area. I went to work for B. She was a Swiss immigrant, and she bought the old X-Bar 1 ranch on the original alignment of Route 66 near the Hackberry schoolhouse, near the town of Hackberry. And I'd get my mail in Hackberry, and later Valentine, where she was Mrs. Griggs was the postmistress, and she was murdered there some years later. Then I got a job through Beatrice. I met Bruno Tessari, an amazing person. Like I said, I love colorful people. This guy was amazing, fluent 4 or 5 languages. He'd come here shortly after the war, made a fortune in California real estate, and now was living his dream of building a Western ranch. And he bought some property up base of the Music Mountains. It was overlooking Antares Point, where Giganticus Heticus is now. And for a Saturday evening, I'd clean myself up a bit and saddle up and ride across the desert, across the valley to Antares Point, because they had great chili and cold beer. About a year into that project, Bruno died unexpectedly, and then his wife decided to shut down the project. And so I went off searching for other work, and I went to work for a little bit in an underground mining outfit, Juniper Mines. I learned some great lessons there. One, just because they say they're going to pay you, even though they're your paycheck's a little late or your paycheck bounced, if they tell you they're going to pay you, but yet the porta-johns get repossessed because they're not paying rent, chances are you're not going to get paid. And I didn't. So I went to another job that was Route 66 connected. I started driving some trucks, freight runs to Oklahoma City and Wichita. And by this time, Route 66 and I-40 were, they were there. So Oklahoma City was a direct run, Route 66 and I-40. Wichita, I would drive to Tucumcari and then take 54 up into Wichita. I did that for a while, and that was another job like the underground mining outfit that was a good living if you didn't plan on living long. So after that played out, I went to work. My little sister had moved down to New Mexico. So I went down to New Mexico. She said that Kennecott Copper was hiring. I went to work down there as a dredge operator. Went to work for an underground outfit for a bit, and then drifted back into my John Wayne-isms. Started working ranches in the Members River Valley and down along the Mexican border. The Route 66 connection stayed with me, even though I was in southern New Mexico. An old wrangler down there talked to me, and joining him on occasions for rodeos, going to rodeos, pulling horse trailers and going to rodeos, doing things. And for a short time, I tried saddle bronc riding at county fairs and whatnot. And I quickly learned that was another way God selectively eliminated stupid people. But that took us into a lot of places, like from Silver City, we'd run the Highway 180 up to Holbrook, and I'd be in Gallup, Moriarty, Tucumcari, different Route 66 communities, even into western Oklahoma on a couple occasions. After that, I went to work. I moved back up towards the Kingman area, and pretty much ever since I've been in Mojave and Yavapai County. I went to work for a spread, an outfit out of Chino Valley, a little place out of Drake, Arizona, just near Ash Fork. And once a month, I'd go into Kingman or Prescott for supplies. And every couple of weeks, I'd go into Seligman and get my hair cut. At a barber shop there. Really great fella. And he's still around, still alive. Doesn't cut hair anymore. You might have heard of him. A little fella named Angel Delgadillo. But the interstate had pretty much replaced Route 66 in western Arizona by this time. But I drove 66 because I liked it. Like I said, my mom said I was born 90, and I just never seemed to get any older. It just felt comfortable to me. I just liked it, and I like the people. I like the Barkers at the Frontier Cafe in Truxton. I always stop in there for grab a bite to eat when I was driving into Kingman. Another reason I drove Route 66 is I had upgraded my transportation a little bit over a period. Now I was driving a 1946 GMC pickup, and the speedometer didn't work, but I could always tell when I got up around 45 miles an hour, she'd start slinging oil up against the windshield. So it was best I stayed on 66. And it was during one of those excursions to Kingman that I met a really amazing woman. She's been my wife for 42 years, and we've been together about 45 years. She's up for sainthood, my dearest friend, my wife, Judy. I owe her so much, including these books. Fast forward a tad bit, we ended up getting married, and I was between jobs. when a film crew came to Kingman. It turned out to be the movie Roadhouse 66 with Judge Reinhold and William Dafoe. And I got hired on as kind of an extra here and there, and mostly moving equipment, being a gopher, that kind of thing. And it provided some much needed income at the time, and I also got fed pretty decent, so it cut down on the grocery bill. My pa always said, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. And that building where the bar scenes were filmed was an old roadhouse on 66 here in Kingman called the Tavern. Now that building is a machine shop for TNT Engineering next door. And on the wall of the Tavern, on one side you can see the ghost sign that says Tavern, and the other side is a Bob Waldmeyer mural. When Bob was living out at the Hackberry General Store, he would get his Volkswagen bus serviced or repaired down there at TNT, and in exchange he created this mural on the building. Well, I went on to a couple other things. I got a job with 66 Auto Sales. You want to guess what highway that was on? Started out doing a couple different things. I started working on a lot, and then tried my hand at sales. I just couldn't sleep at night and stretch sincerity far enough to do that, so I pulled the plug on car sales. Went to work in the shop, and then I started working on the finance end, mostly a lot of it repossessions. And repossessions, and the story is for another day, but suffice to say, it took me into a lot of Route 66 places, Peach Springs, and all the way across Arizona, into California, even as far as some points into New Mexico. A lot of Route 66 communities. And during this time, I started, the Renaissance was coming up, but I didn't see it. To me, I liked the old road because it was comfortable. It was me. And I was getting to meet some just incredible people like Bob Waldmeyer, and we developed them. I was really surprised that we were able to develop such a deep friendship. I really treasured that. He was such a decent, kind, caring person, and such a strength of character. He just was a pretty amazing man. But in '93, I was selected as chairman for the Route 66 Fun Run Committee, Historic Route 66 Association of Arizona, working with Jerry Richards and Angel Delgadillo and Vince Salmon and some others. And we moved the Fun Run from Centennial Park to downtown Kingman that year. And it's been downtown ever since. The following year, Scott Dutton, I'd done some things with him, got to know him pretty well. And his family still has. They have a long, long association with Route 66. And R. Dutton had a garage in Gold Road on the National Trails Road. And in Jack Rittenhouse's book, Guide to Highway 66, it mentions a towing service over St. Greaves Pass from a garage in Gold Road. That was N.R. Dutton. N.R. Dutton also built Cool Springs, and then he established Dutton Motors, which is now Dutton Motors Dream Machines, in 1946 on Route 66. And Mr. D's Route 66 Diner, that originally opened in 1940 as the Kingman Cafe, and the D is Roy Dutton, N.R. Dutton's nephew. The Dutton family bought that in the early 90s and transformed it into Mr. D's. But Kingman, like a lot of Route 66 communities, the downtown, the bypass of Route 66 had just devastated the historic business district. And we got to thinking of ways to try to pull this together. And so we established the Route 66 Association of Kingman, Arizona, with a goal of putting this, revitalizing downtown. And we got involved with a lot of different initiatives and projects. And we were as it turned out, looking back on it, we were laying the seeds. And it culminated in 2014. And a lot of you that have been involved in community development know that the communities, cities, governments, tourism offices very seldom are visionary, or they're not big on change and they move slow. So it's hard. A lot of times it's the grassroots, the people that pull these things forward. In 2014, at this time, Michael Wallace had the Route 66 Alliance, and they were doing International Route 66 Festival every year. they'd sanction it and endorse it in different cities. Well, I talked to Michael in Victorville at the festival, and I talked to him in Joplin, and then I stopped and talked to him in Tulsa. So we got approval for 2014. And in 6 months, I'm astounded, but we put together a festival that I'm very, very proud of, working with Dora Manley and so many other business owners here in Kingman. The city, tourism, the state association, they had the fun run. They saw no reason for this event. They didn't really get on board till about 3 weeks before it actually took place. But it all worked out incredibly. We put together the Crossroads. The theme was Crossroads, the Past and Future. And we put together a 3-day conference that mimicked the old US Highway 66 conventions. And we had an incredible array of speakers. Kaiser from National Park Service. We had Dries Bessels of the Dutch Association. We had Larry Klontz from Shamrock Economic Development, Shamrock, Texas. Roderick Wild, Historic Electric Vehicle Foundation. We had people representing bicycle tourism. We had state tourism. It was just amazing. And you can still find that on YouTube, Crossroads, the Past and Future Conference. And we did some other things. We found out that the Historic Electric Vehicle Foundation was thinking of starting a museum up in Tacoma, Washington. And we met with Roderick, and we talked to him into bringing that to Kingman. And that embryonic museum languished right up until just now. And it looks like we're going to have an EV museum full operational by next year. We've had an embryonic display of electric vehicles in the powerhouse since 2014, but that didn't get off the ground. We ended up with people from like 35 states and 6-7 countries. We had the first meetings with Route 66 associations in Europe to discuss possible European Route 66 festivals. We launched the Route 66 Walk of Fame. We envisioned this to be a centennial project, and that would be in inductions every year leading up to the centennial. Tourism didn't see the merits in it, and it languished after the second year. There's more to that story. But we put in Austin bricks honoring like John Weiss, Michael Wallace, Bob Waldmeyer, Cyrus Avery, people who had contributed to transforming Route 66 from highway to icon. The reason I say there's more to that story, one of the things we wanted to do at the 2014 festival, we'd been introduced to QR codes, and we had the idea of putting together a narrated historic district walking tour using QR code technology, and couldn't get any interest in it. In 21, Kingman Main Street started trolling for projects, and this came up in conversation, so they approached me, since I'd been kind of instrumental in that, trying to get that idea going. They asked me if I would do the research and narration, which I agreed to. Then they went to the city and they created Depot Plaza at the old railroad depot, which sits at the junction of 2 different alignments of Route 66. And they moved the bricks from the Walk of Fame as a center point for Depot Plaza. And then they still do. They sell bricks around that, commemorative bricks, for funding Kingman Main Street projects. And that became the starting point for the Kingman Tours project. It's www.kingman.tours. And the starting point, the kiosk there, is the only one I didn't narrate. That one is narrated by Mayor Jen Miles. This was a controversial part of the project for me. And it took some real convincing. My dearest friend and I, we had to do some real serious brainstorming and thinking. And it took some words from friends in the Route 66 community for me to go with this. But Kingman Main Street wanted, as the cornerstone for Depot Plaza, besides the Walk of Fame, they wanted public art. They wanted to commission a bronze statue of me. So I agreed to this. I'm honored and I'm very humbled, but I do wish they would have waited till I was dead. Every time I see that damn thing, it's kind of like I'm attending my own funeral. And it's kind of it's surreal to see pictures on Facebook where people are posing with a statue there at the Walk of Fame and all, and make as a destination. It's just odd. And even stranger, this all debuted on National Road Trip Day 2022. And the crowd that turned out, I was amazed for the unveiling. I was honored and just humbled by this. And I was also surprised. There's a lot of people in Kingman that, for whatever reasons, you know how these things go, small town stuff. I walk in a room, they look for a tree and a tall rope. And it was like being back on the car lot. These folks were stretching sincerity to the breaking point, singing my praises. So that, you know, that's another connection to the Route 66 story and the people. The Jim Hinckley's American Network. It was never envisioned as a Jim show. It was about the people. That's what Coffee with Jim, our weekly podcast, it's about the people. And this pretty much started with my dearest friend, with her encouragement. I was always told that I could tell stories for hours, you know, if I was the only one in the room, and still enjoy myself. And I had a gift for telling people where to go. And she encouraged me to write. And I've always loved books all my life. And as a kid, I dreamed of being a writer. Never thought I'd do it. I was always blue collar. But with her encouragement, I set out to become a writer. And much to my surprise, my first attempt, I sold an article to a major publication, Special Interest Autos by Hennings Motor News. I did a story about a wrecking yard down Huachuca City near the Mexican border. Fascinating wrecking yard, and another colorful character I met down there, a guy named Milo. What a strange man he was. Well, I once I got a check for my first writing assignment, I thought, boy, I'm going to quit my day job and chase this childhood dream. At this point, I need to clarify something. Do you know what the definition of a writer is? This is the person who makes their entire living from the written word, and they can still afford to eat every other day. There's really no money in writing, but it opens doors for all kinds of things. And you meet the most amazing people, the greatest friendships. Like this book, the friends that are with this book. I've met so many incredible people. I had so many grand adventures through my writing, and a lot of my writing is linked to Route 66. My early writing was focused on the evolution of the American auto industry, and that stems from a fascination and with that history. Short thing here, my grandfather was born in 1865. He was 63 when my dad was born. And my family had no interest in history, but there was a picture of Henry Ford and my grandfather on the front porch of the Hinckley house. And it was a quest to know more about his story and the auto industry that he was involved with that led to my obsession with the American auto industry before World War II. So I wrote for a lot of magazines. I worked for Paul Taylor. I wrote for early editions of Route 66 magazine. I was associate editor for Cars and Parts magazine. Then I started writing books. I'm still working on becoming a writer when I grow up. This is my 23rd book. Where this is going to go, I've got no idea. But it has been a grand adventure. And Route 66 is not just an American linear community. It's an international linear community. The role of immigrants in the Route 66 story is so important. And film producer John Paget, when I talked about this, that he's telling a lot of the immigrant story in his upcoming centennial documentary. And the international situation is amazing. I was privileged to speak at a holiday and tourism fair in Utrecht, Netherlands, the largest in Western Europe, about Route 66. The Dutch Association, Route 66 Association, hosted a reception for us at De Praal. It was amazing. Swa and Nadine come up from Belgium. They were instrumental pioneers in development of the international Route 66 community. I was able to work with Wolfgang and Anya and speak at the 2016 European Route 66 Festival in Ofterding in Germany. I was involved with Zdeněk Jurisic, helping organize and then speaking at the big one, the 2018 European Festival in Zlin, Czechia. That turned into an epic adventure that included meeting with Marian Pavel down in Bratislava, Slovakia, Poland, Austria, Ukraine, Germany. it was astounding. And Route 66 took me there, took me to all these places. I've had such grand adventures because of Route 66. I'm very, very blessed and very, very honored. And my dearest friend and I are just rich beyond measure because of the friends that we have made through our connection with Route 66. We're not myopic. We love the great American road trip. But there's just something truly special about this highway, about Route 66. And I didn't want to get too long-winded, but I just wanted to, I was asked to share a bit of my story, and there you have it. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank you for all the contributions that you are making to the Route 66 community and ensuring it is here for the bicentennial. I don't think I will be here for the bicentennial celebrations. Now, Angel Delgadillo might, like say, he doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. But I digress. Listen, I'd sure love to talk with each and every one of you, and perhaps our paths will cross on the road. And I'd sure like to hear your story. So let's get together for a cup of coffee or a cold beer and chew the fat sometimes. And if you'd like to join me as a guest on Coffee with Jim, well, drop me a note. With that said, my friends, I will bid you adios. And again, Debbie, Joe, Cheryl, Jeff, Terry, thank you so very much for your dedication to this conference and to keeping us going. Thank you, my friends. Adios.